The first thing I heard on my very first day as a homeowner wasn't the birds or the wind or even the grind of a moving truck. It was a woman's voice slicing across the street like a car alarm. "You can't live here," she shrieked, and I just stood there, still gripping the key fob that had barely warmed up in my palm, still wearing that goofy, tired grin you get when a decade of scraping by and saving every extra dollar finally turns into a house with your name on the mailbox. And this lady, she came barreling across the yard so fast you'd think I'd parked on her dog, didn't bother with hello, just planted herself right at my bumper and started waving her finger in my face like I'd just broken into her safe deposit box. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep it breezy with my window halfway down, "I literally just closed an hour ago." She shot back, "Not on that house." Her eyes were all wild and shiny. "That house belongs to my family. You've made a mistake. Leave before this gets ugly." "My name's Ethan. By the way, I work in IT. My wife Lena's a nurse. And for 6 months straight, we've been outbid by cash buyers who treated open houses like Black Friday sales, waltzing in and out with smug little nods and no contingencies. When this two-story place on Willow Creek came on the market, big shade trees, quiet street, felt like a steal. It didn't ask why the price was low. Maybe I should have, we told ourselves. Maybe it's just our turn for some luck. A motivated seller, clean title, and a yard where you could actually hear the wind. I thought that was the American dream, right? Well, Valerie Shaw, the woman in question, could have cared less about my dreams. She pointed at the gable like she'd just spotted a crime scene. "That house is part of Maple Ridge Community Association," she declared. "As acting president, I'm ordering you to vacate until we sort this out." I just pulled out my paperwork. Me weekend hobby, apparently, was printing out county parcel maps. "Valerie, right? This lot was never annexed. It predates your HOA by 15 years. Different covenants, different everything. I even had the lot lines highlighted in neon yellow, thinking that would settle it." She just stared at the page like it was written in Morse code. "Maps can be wrong," she sniffed, which tells you just about everything you need to know about Valerie. She whipped out her phone, called someone, and didn't even say hello. "Board members to my house now. We have a hostile occupier." 15 minutes later, 3 cars pulled up and a little HOA quorum gathered on our lawn, polos, clipboards, the works. They weren't rude, at least. They checked my deed, cross-referenced their binder, and one older guy with kind eyes told Valerie he's in the right. The Ellison parcel was never incorporated. Valerie's smile got tighter than shrink wrap. "We'll see," she hissed. And I knew right then this wasn't over. Driving home, my hand shook the whole way. Lena listened, then squeezed my hand and joked, "If that's the welcoming committee, maybe we need cameras before we buy a couch." So that night, we ordered a doorbell cam, 2 side cams, and a floodlight, telling ourselves it was just being careful, not paranoid. Next morning, my phone buzzes. Unknown number. Don't trust anything Valerie tells you about that house. Document everything. She's dangerous. No name, no follow-up, just that. And there I was, the IT guy who lectures everyone about not trusting random links, now treating an anonymous text like gospel. Moving day should be boxes and pizza and dropping things on your toes. Ours started with Valerie out front, dragging a measuring tape across my fence post, scribbling on a clipboard. "You're out of setback," she muttered. I tried, again, to explain not in your HOA, breathing like my therapist taught me. "City ordinance," she retorted, then added, "Grandfather clauses lapse when a property changes hands. You'll need to reapply for compliance." And that's how I learned a phrase, weaponizing bureaucracy. 3 days later, I got a pink slip from code, enforcement improper trash container placement. Next week, a notice for unapproved exterior color. Never mind that we hadn't painted a thing. Then came untidy lawn, which was a joke we'd trimmed that yard like it was about to interview for a scholarship. I called the city, sat on hold forever, and finally got a real person. She sighed. "Best advice? Appeal everything. Keep records." So I did. Bought a binder, set up my cameras to auto-archive, and started living like I was building a case against a cartoon villain. Cameras caught Valerie on our porch measuring the distance from the trash can to the railing at 6 a.m. Saw her peering through our gate at sunset. Recorded her coaching a neighbor on how to document a noise complaint while birds chirped, not a riot in sight. Lena would call on her break and ask, "How's my favorite homeowner?" And I'd say, "I'm basically a full-time evidence clerk now." Then the gut punch. "My boss calls me on Zoom. Careful voice. Someone complained about your disruptive behavior in the neighborhood." I showed him my binder, explained the lawn letter for our freshly trimmed yard. Thankfully, he believed me. But I realized Valerie wasn't just trying to annoy Mesh, was trying to unspool our lives, thread by thread. That night, another anonymous text. She's done this before. 3 families in 2 years. Same pattern. Harass, isolate, force a sale to a preservation trust. I started digging public records, trust deeds, sales 20 to 50K below market. I found a seller Janet, mid-50s, living in a cramped apartment, hands shaking around a mug. "My husband started chemo," she said. Violations came every Friday. Valerie offered to help us sell. We thought we were escaping. I still wake up thinking there's a notice on my door. There's a kind of anger that doesn't make you loud, it makes you focused. I hired a lawyer, Erin Walsh. She flipped through my binder, asked sharp questions, and finally said, "Ethan, this isn't a neighbor spat. It's interference with property rights, maybe even civil conspiracy." We filed appeals, a harassment report, even drafted a restraining order for Valerie, just in case. For the first time in weeks, I slept, but Valerie cranked up the pressure. My side camera caught her in her garage with 5 people under a shop light, handing out schedules Monday morning, trash. Tuesday dusk, lawn. Thursday night, disturbances. It wasn't community upkeep. It was a hit list. Then the anonymous number called the voice all warped, told me, "She's filing for a restraining order, claims you threatened her. Judge can remove you." She did it to a widower on Alder Lane. Be ready. The call ended and left my stomach in my shoes. The petition arrived Thursday. Valerie claimed aggressive confrontations, attached 3 neighbor statements that all sounded like copied homework, and cherry-picked clips from my own security feed clips that made me look like a psycho when you chopped off the part where she trespassed. It's a sick feeling, seeing your own life twisted against you. Erin, my lawyer, brought in a projector to court, played the full footage. Valerie crossing my property line, measuring tape at dawn, whispering to a neighbor, you have to say felt threatened. The judge's eyebrow shot up. Then Erin introduced new evidence photos, time-stamped, of Valerie handing an envelope to a code inspector at a coffee shop. The room turned cold. Petition denied. Referral to the district attorney for investigation. Valerie got a warning for perjury. The bailiff even apologized to me on the way out. Word spread like wildfire in a neighborhood itching for relief. That night, people formed little knots on the corners, trading security videos, dusting off files of old violations they'd been too ashamed to share. At the emergency HOA meeting, folks did a poem by one talked about the shame, the dread, the constant feeling that maybe they were the problem. They voted to remove Valerie 28-1. You can guess who the one was. Valerie tried to give a speech about sacrifice and standards, but the room had moved on. When the curtain drops, it drops. Afterward, as people drifted off, a man stepped out of the shadows, hands in pockets, face plain as cardboard. "Ethan, I'm Marcus. Marcus Hale." That last name Hale clicked. Ruth Ellison's nephew. The woman who'd owned my house for 45 years. Turns out, Marcus was the anonymous tipster. "I tried to stop her when my aunt was alive," he said. "I was too late, but I wanted to make sure Valerie never did again." He handed me a portfolio, timelines of violations, transfers into the Redwood Trust, more affidavits than you'd believe. "You used me as bait," I said, but it wasn't anger, just the truth. "You stood your ground," he replied. "Most people can't, not because they're weak, but because life is heavy. I looked for a buyer who could hold the line. I hated needing one. From there, things shifted. Not a vigilante club, just a neighborhood that paid attention. We taught each other how to appeal a bogus notice, which city offices to CC so complaints didn't vanish, what words to watch for. The city, with a DA now watching, clean house to inspectors reassigned, one suspended, a new online log anyone could see. Sunlight, as they say, makes the paper trail scatter. A reporter picked up the story. Valerie's husband, Greg, turned state's witness, admitted he'd signed trust docs thinking it was just smart investing, not a shakedown. It broke him, honestly. Predators don't just hurt strangers, they hollow out their own homes. Lena and I got our lives back, piece by piece, a quiet cup of coffee, a nap with the dog snoring at our feet, a yard that didn't feel like evidence. Sometimes I think about Marcus putting us in the line of fire. Sometimes I wish someone else had been the one. Mostly, I just feel grateful we could do what others shouldn't have to, and angry that it was even necessary. We still get stopped on the street. People want to talk about HOAs, about where standards turn into control. I don't hate HOAs. I hate when people use them to bully, to make cruelty look like duty. Order isn't ownership. Community doesn't mean weaponizing the rules against the ones with the least power. A month after the hearing, I got a postcard and a return address. Just 3 families' names and a single line. We saw your story and we're not selling. Lena pinned it on the fridge with a redbird magnet. We went outside and watered the elderflower bush that someone had left USA, little sign that joy was welcome again. I'm telling you all this not because I love drama, but because a lot of us move to streets like mine looking for quiet. When that quiet breaks, we think it's our fault we can hear the noise. It isn't. Sometimes the loudest voice is just the one who figured out how to make a clipboard sound like a badge. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just say, that doesn't apply to me, and then back it up with facts. So let me ask you, if you pulled into your brand new driveway and someone tried to tell you you didn't belong, would you pack up to keep the peace? Or would you stand your ground, even knowing it might get ugly before it gets better? Where do you draw the line between standards and control, between caring and nosy tyranny? Drop your stories in the comments. Tell me what justice looks like when the bully wears a blazer and smiles for the newsletter. I'll be here probably labeling another tab, watering a yard that finally feels like it's really ours.